A $1 autonomous car ride. No driver, no one behind the steering wheel. Driving through Shenzhen's expressways, narrow alleys, and making these massive U-turns only unique to this city. I was sitting in the back, genuinely feeling safer with the AI than I would have in a regular cab. And that was day 4. Honestly, that was the highlight of my week as I was trying to find the AI capital of the world. Spoiler alert, I'm not sure I did find it. Welcome to Hardware. So we chose this week to visit Shenzhen because it was CITE 2026, or CITE, which is China's big tech and innovation exhibition. If it was anywhere I was going to find AI and robots, it was going to be here. Now before you decide to visit Shenzhen, you would think that being a big tech hub and player, that you would be able to use your international phone here, but you would be wrong. You should get a data eSIM at least, or a phone number. Now, I did not have a phone number with Airalo. It worked well with the data eSIM, but I would advise you to activate your eSIM ahead of your trip. I tried to use NordVPN to get through the firewall, but that didn't work. It would connect, but it wouldn't load anything. Now, without your data, you can forget about Google, Apple Maps, or even WhatsApp. With my data plan, I did find myself using a lot of Google because I wasn't going to use Baidu or Amaps to try and find my way around. My Chinese isn't that great. Now people talk about Shenzhen like it's some futuristic megacity. Now you need to understand some context. This was a fishing village just 40 years ago, so their evolution and growth has been massive. Of course, when I was walking around, you would still find mostly traces of this fishing village. Many people just getting about their day, lots of markets and whatnot. All of their residential blocks look like they were quite old. In contrast, you would go into the malls, which were surprisingly built downwards, and you would find very bougie fit-outs and marble floors, and it would be so different from the general vibe. Surprisingly, again, I didn't find much use of AI or automation out and about on the streets, and I probably found more of that in Singapore. Now you look up, and all you see are these huge towers and skyscrapers with large lights and advertisements on them, which is quite amazing. Architecturally magnificent. You would have these very amazing looking buildings like this one here, and you even have a full pink McDonald's, which I found very interesting. So if you're going to Shenzhen, everyone points you to Haoqiangbei, which has massive buildings of just tech gadgets and mobile phones. And this was in contrast to malls built downwards. These were up to level 10, full of gadgets, little shops. You could negotiate with anyone, although everything seemed quite pricey still. When you get there, you'll find large concourse full of robots. There were even brands like Unitree there, which you may have heard about, the G1 robot. I went in there and most of the attention was on the robots, dogs, not the robot dogs that jump up mountains. I mean those toy dogs, right? That you just watch them bark and jump around, right? And there were these remote controlled cars that were being played with. The G1 robot was in there, surprisingly, but it was just sitting in one corner and the attention was not on that. There were even these very large drones that they had on display. I think they were for carrying cargo, maybe humans. There was a miniature helicopter that I think could take one person. But again, very surprising. Not much focus on the robots. There were a few robot shops here and there, and these buildings, they're quite complicated if you don't know what you're doing. So I was advised to go to SEG to look for tech gadgets or AI. And I ended up going into SEG.com, which is actually full of wholesale mobile accessories and phone cases. And I went up to level 5 and that's all they had. So spent an hour there, a bit of wasted time, and I later found out where I needed to be was the SEG e-market. Now that had plenty of devices, even semiconductors, spare parts, cards, you name it, it was all there. All little shops, lots of repairmen as well. I was on the search for GPUs when I went there, because I had assumed that you could get them at good rate. However, all you would find are either outdated 3000 series, not much VRAM, not good for AI workloads, or you would find the really top of the line 4090s and 5090s, which had 24 gigabytes of VRAM, but they were starting at about 20,000 renminbi, and that equates to about 3,000 USD. Now, I wasn't going to buy these NVIDIA devices there at $3,000. That seemed like I could get them at retail price back at home or even in the US. So that was a bit disappointing. Then I sought out to look for AI devices. So I was informed that they were selling OpenClaw devices. One of them was a headquartered startup in Shenzhen called Premier AI. So you can check out the link in the description on what it does, but it's basically an OpenClaw mini device of which you can connect to it via WhatsApp, connect it into Wi-Fi. Very cool stuff. And I watched a video where they had replicated something similar. I searched all 10 stories of SEG and I could not find it. I did, however, find some shops that were installing OpenClaw on a hardware box, albeit of course quite a large box, and I didn't find it that useful for me. I know how to install OpenClaw myself on my own machines or even on a VPS, a virtual cloud. So there wasn't really much point in buying these OpenClaw boxes, and I think they were quite pricey as well. I'm not sure. There was this device, however, that I saw. There was a shop just dedicated to this. So I'll put the link or the image in the description, but they have an ARM on ARM device which allows you to run 2 OpenClaw instances. They also mention a cloud, a mobile OpenClaw cloud, which I thought was quite interesting, but there was no mention of price and the guy wasn't at the shop. So that was interesting. Apart from that, there were funny devices here and there, but nothing that much of interest, or even in the AI space, to be honest. Then I went over to the other places in Haoqiangbei. So there was one called Haoqiangbei City. So they had a lot of different devices, a lot of people trying to sell you massage devices. Of course, again, mobile phones, used mobile phones. Nothing that I found too fancy. I did ask for some of the prices of these used mobile phones. About 30 to 40% off the retail price. So for example, a 14 Pro that normally goes for 1,000 USD retail was selling for about 500 USD. The risks just outweigh me buying an iPhone from there. So that wasn't very handy. So I would say I didn't find much too unique at Haoqiangbei. Mostly if you wanted parts to build a hardware device of your own or build your own computer, that would be great if you're staying there. However, no device that I came across piqued my fancy or was very unique. So after Haoqiangbei, on my agenda was to sit on these robotaxis, and I watched this Channel News Asia clip on the experience that they had, and I believe it didn't give it enough credit. I found it a lot more impressive than it actually was. So the area which these cars actually cover is quite a large area of Shenzhen. It's not a little small area as I was led to believe. It's almost half of Shenzhen that these cars cover. It had mentioned to download this application called 萝卜快跑 or Carrot Run. And unfortunately, because without a Chinese phone number, I could not get the SMS verification. So fortunately, I did find this other application called Pony Pilot or Pony AI. This was in fact much better because it was in English language, seemed catered to tourists, and it worked just as well. I booked a car from the OCT building to Talent Park, where they had these massive malls. They're called Mix C, and it was about 20-minute drive. It did these very amazing maneuvers that I would expect it not to do. So for example, it had half of a lane to play with to get around a car that was turning right into a car park, and on the left lane a car came straight through while we were trying to overtake, and it stopped just in time, no issue, and then continued to go around the car. So it doesn't just lock itself into a particular lane, it can do half lanes as well. It did this big U-turn around at an expressway, and because there's no lanes on the road, I was quite amazed how it was going to handle that. It almost ran into a car because the car, a human-driven car, is not following any lane, so they're doing a UE however they want, and we almost hit the car, but again it stopped in time and continued to do the U-turn. The other thing it did was it was trying to make a turn to the right to get to our destination, but it decided that the queue was too long. So it didn't queue up, it turned away, took a completely different route. It told us that because now it's going to take another 10 minutes, I think it did, and it was going to give us a discount. Unfortunately, it did not give us a discount, but it didn't really matter. It was 7.7 renminbi, which equates to about $1 USD, which is not much, honestly, for a 20-minute drive. You can treat it as a safe driver. It wasn't speeding up when it could have, but it did all the right turns. Didn't seem to do anything out of the ordinary that I wouldn't. It's a good driver, let's be honest. It wasn't doing just simple drive down lanes. It was definitely not a toy project. It was driving down real roads. It wasn't driving in a low traffic area. It was driving down really busy roads, avoiding humans, everything you could see on the display. So it was amazing, it was great, and I would highly recommend it. On the Channel News Asia YouTube video, they also flew on these one-man helicopters, so that was at display at CITE. I didn't get to do that, unfortunately, but again, very interesting time for AI and transport, and I would hope that this technology goes out to all countries in the next 5 years. We also went to the park to order a bubble tea through their drones that would get delivered directly to us. The minimum order was 30 renminbi, but one bubble tea was only about 20, so I didn't do that. Additionally, I didn't have SMS, as I mentioned, and it required Meituan, but I did manage to get around that through the WeChat integration. Then it came to CITE. This was a trade exhibition. It wasn't a public event where you could buy devices and whatnot. Very huge Shenzhen Convention and Exhibition Center. Some of the halls were dedicated to vendors and manufacturers of GPUs, which I found very cool. Companies or enterprises, they struggle with GPU and storage devices in data centers, and these vendors would absolutely be a great help to that. So if you want to know more, I have some flyers as well. I have a full catalog of all of them that were exhibiting there, so reach out if you want to know more. I did find this funny device. It could host 128 OpenClaw instances. I thought that was a bit comical. They've already betted on a future of OpenClaw data centers and having devices for that, even though I've never heard of a single enterprise deploying OpenClaw, specifically OpenClaw, in production. So I thought that was a very interesting bet. Then I go down to the robot section, and I was expecting to see some of these fancy robots that you see online being talked about coming out of China. There weren't any new robots that I had seen. There was one robot that many people were interested in that could greet you in Chinese, and it was doing hand movements, nothing really fancy. There was a vendor that was building soccer robot armies, I suppose, for teaching kids or being goalkeepers. I'm not so sure what the point of that is. There were a couple of robot bands, so they were playing music, they were playing the drums. Interesting again, but good for. So those would be good for events. Unfortunately, I did not see Unitree. I did not see Unix AI either. So apparently last week they came up with a household robot that could do all your chores. Put the link in the description. It looks absolutely what I would like in my home to do all of the chores. Maybe that takes away my use completely at home, but that would have been a robot I would like to have bought and shipped back in odd size baggage. Moving away from the robots section, then we get to the OpenClaw section, and that's what that section was called. They had a few different booths. One of them was this claw tile. Right, so the QR is on the bottom if you can scan that. So they do have a video demonstration of that in WeChat. From what I can gather, it is a recording device. So you put it on your table, you record whatever you talked about in the day, and it will send it to OpenClaw with your token. And that goes for 300 RMB. Outside of the event goes for 500. So that was one device. Another device was this one, ClawPi. So like Raspberry Pi, but ClawPi. So it's OpenClaw on a box. It didn't seem to do anything too fancy. A lot of people that visited the booth were asking what OpenClaw or what it was about. So I felt not much understanding still about OpenClaw, even in the AI capital, or so they say. ClawPi just has a QR code on the top of it, lets you connect in with WeChat, and you use it just as you would OpenClaw. So it went for 1600 renminbi, which is about 250 USD. I didn't think that it was worth the money. I would be better off buying a full Mac Mini. Then at the end of the event, a guy came over, spoke to me about his AI startup called Tango AI. So what he told me was he's in this beta test phase, and actually before that, it was quite a relief to speak to someone who was speaking perfect English after having listening and reading everything in Chinese for about a week. So it was refreshing. And Tango AI is meant to train your agent based on your inputs. He did also mention most people he spoke to were worried about the security of OpenClaw. So I'll put the link in the description. Check him out. It's something I think that it would be very useful, especially for my purposes, if it could just learn from what I'm doing. So here's my honest take. So AI capital of the world. So while the robotaxis were really impressive, that was about the only AI use case I really found that was in use. I did not find as many robots in Shenzhen as I would have perhaps in Singapore, where you have robots that are cleaning the malls, you have robots as security guards at Changi Airport, and you don't have that really in Shenzhen. People are not using automation as much as I expected. Again, fishing village, right? But of course, architecturally, very good. There is a lot of AI hype and OpenClaw hype, actually. Now, of course, I did find few vendors that were willing to install it on your own machine. There were videos surfacing where people were going to the Tencent headquarters in Shenzhen to get OpenClaw installed and then later uninstalled. I went to the Tencent headquarters and only crows were passing. Did not see any blip of any hype. So I think that was a one-off. I even saw in, I think it was Oppo shop, there was this sign where they were offering to install it for you. But that week was over, right? And nothing else after that. OpenClaw in a box, I'm not sure about that. Seems a way to monetize the whole thing. I was quite surprised that there's a list of 30 claw variants out there in China. OpenClaw not on that list, but all I could see were OpenClaw references. There was one reference to QClaw at CITE, and that was it. So would I go back? Yes, most likely. If I needed devices, if I needed spare parts, that would be great. Not that many of that in Singapore. It was a genuinely interesting city. Great food, impressive architecture, kind people. But I wouldn't go specifically for the AI hardware or the robots for that matter. What I would go back for, of course, are the robotaxis. What I would not go back for were the cats. Genuinely, the cats were everywhere. This should not be called the AI capital. This should be called the cat capital of the world. And it didn't do well with my allergies to cats. So if you're thinking of going down to Shenzhen, I hope that you found that this helps. I'll link what I saw in the description below. And if you want to know more about the vendors at CITE, I picked up a vendor, reach out to me and I can tell you more about that. See you in the next episode.